Hi, good evening everyone. My name is Kid Almond, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about a stock I'm pretty bullish on that I think follows a lot of patterns, sort of similar to what Bitcoin does. And, I just wanted to come here and talk about it. So, on this channel, I've talked about Bitcoin a lot. I think it's probably close to a third to half of my videos are spent talking about Bitcoin. And the reason why I spend so much time talking about Bitcoin is because it seems that Bitcoin follows this pattern where it goes down for, a year straight. If you look over here, and it seems like we're repeating this 1 year movement again, and then it spends the next 3 years going up. And the reason why you get these nice 3 years going up is because these down movements are pretty violent. That you don't usually see this in normal assets being this violent down. But you get compensated that with a reliable 3 years going up. That's the compensation that you get for this brutal 1 year going down. And it's a pattern that I've discussed in my videos that you can take a look around and kind of see, more about this pattern that I talk about. But I think a stock that, and by the way, none of this should be considered financial advice, and please discuss important financial decisions with a financial advisor. Please consider this all speculation. But another asset or stock that I think really follows, to me, a very similar pattern is, you can probably see it here, Tesla. And right now we're looking at so if you go to almondinvest.com, you can actually look at Tesla right here, and you can see the normal linear chart. Right here, right? This is the linear chart. And, I'm looking on a different website known as TradingView, so we're taking a different view of this chart. And the reason why I'm looking at it on a logarithmic scale, okay, is because if we look at this price increase here, we can see the price was $15 here to $50 there. So this is 15, and this is 50. So we can see this right here is a 3x. Okay, this is a 3x right there. Let's also look over here. Let's point out this spot. So that's 160 right there. And right now, this is, let's see, 450 is right here. Okay, this is 450. This right here, this section that I just drawn is another 3x. You see how this box right here, these are the exact same. This is a 3x right here, and this is another 3x. This box is bigger. This is the bigger box than this box right there, right? But even though this one's bigger on the side, this one's bigger, they're the same percentage increase, right? If you had bought in at $15 and it went up to 50, if you had bought in, this, that's a 3x, right? In a very similar way that this right here is also like a 3x. So what I'm trying to get across is, once you put it on a logarithmic scale, this 3x is the exact same now. This right here is a 3x, and this is also a 3x. And you see how the boxes are now the same size, right? So what you're seeing is percentage growth. This is percentage growth that you're looking at when you do it on a logarithmic scale. Because as soon as we take this out of our logarithmic scale, you see how the box is just expanded? We're no longer looking at percentage growth, right? I mean, look at this. So, yeah, that's something that's the reason why I'm looking at it on logarithmic scales. I want to look at the percentage growth. And the thing that stands out to me is we have these large increases in Tesla where it almost goes just straight up. Like, look at this. It goes just straight up. And if you remember what I talked about with Bitcoin, is the reason why you have 3 years going straight up is because you have violent downside movements, right? Well, Tesla, even though it goes straight up, you get many years of basically nothing. So you don't get anything happening over here. And if you kind of look, I mean, it hasn't done a whole lot over here as well. Like, it's done nothing over here, and it's kind of done nothing over there. So my hypothesis is, I think, not this year, let me clearly lay this out. I don't think this year we'll see an increased movement, but probably next year, I think we might see a similar move up like this. And it might seem crazy, but I want to lay out the case why you might see Tesla be a good investment if it follows these same patterns. So why do I think Tesla is probably going to repeat one of these large jumps upwards? Well, my thought process on it is because it's following similar patterns. This looks very similar to this over here. And the reason why I say this is you have the initial move up, right? You hit an all-time high. It goes low, and then it goes even lower, right? And if you kind of look over here, we go low, then we go lower, right? So this is, let's say this is L, this is L2. I mean, it looks pretty similar. And this is a lower low, by the way. So if you look, this drop is even lower. But then what happened is we went to a higher high over here. We went to an all-time high, right? This was an all-time high. We've never been at this price range before in Tesla's history. And if you look right here, that was $500. We were never there ever at this point at Tesla's price history. So this was another all-time high. And if you look, you know, we never really went above this line again. My drawing is super bad, by the way. Like, super bad. But basically, you know, we have a low there, a lower low here. It goes up to the all-time high, and it has a hard time really going above it for a while. And eventually just collapses down. And so what I'm expecting is, if we're still looking at a chart, let's say in a year's time, and we see Tesla going back down, I think this is likely going to be the indication that Tesla's going to have one of these large moves just straight up. And to me, it seems, this looks convincing to me. And now, I'm not saying we're going to have, you know, a carbon copy, you know, exactly what happened over here. I'm not saying it's going to exactly repeat over here. But I think there's some pretty clear similarities to these two charts that give me the confidence I think we're going to see another one of these moves play out. And so, I mean, that's basically what I wanted to talk about. And one thing that you commonly see with stocks that are pretty, it's usually kind of a bullish sign. If you look, let me get this out, is you saw it go back to this low point, what I call a double bottom. We saw it double bottom here, and we saw it go back to here. That's usually, when you see a double bottom, that can really be a good sign. So what I'm thinking is Tesla's probably has a few places it can double bottom. Now, obviously, it can go here, which I think is likely, or it can go here. So from the $160 price range to the $123 price range, I think it's likely to fall within here within the next 1 year, right? Tesla's going to go into this price range right here, and we're probably going to see a pretty big move upwards for, like, you know, a year and a half to 2 years. We'll just probably see the price of Tesla just straight up go crazy. And the thing that I think does kind of convince me of this personally, and why I think it's likely that we could see something this playing out, is, I mean, if you just kind of look, I mean, Tesla did literally nothing for like almost 6 years over here. And if you just kind of look at this over here, I mean, it's also done nothing, right? So it's like, I think there's a pretty good possibility we see this play out. Now, you know, I say this, but I don't think with these patterns, it's a good idea to buy right here, right now. Because if we look, I mean, you saw Tesla go back down and retrace. So I think I would really be looking out to buy Tesla around this range. And something that I find kind of interesting is if we go to almondinvest.com, we can go to Tesla. And one thing we can look at is the 200-week moving average. And what this does is it takes, it looks at one point in time, it goes back 200 weeks and combines the price into one. So it's a mathematically calculated price. This red line, if you see this red line, and you can consistently see Tesla hits this line or gets really close to it every few years. And if you look, we have not hit this line recently, right? And I mean, if we're just looking here, we saw Tesla go from $24 to $12, which is a halving, right? The price halved. If you look at it, it's at almost $400 right now. And this is at, 270. So if it went down here, it doesn't quite line up the best, but there's sort of an area where it might make sense that Tesla will probably come back down here, eventually during some time. And I mean, even if you look at the price, it's been slowly coming down. As sure, it had a small increase, but I think it's just slowly going to come down to this 200-week moving average, which does kind of line up right around here, where I was talking about where the double bottom could be. And it could even go lower. I mean, you could see it go lower over here. I mean, who knows? It probably will go down over there, probably, if I had to speculate. But I think for these reasons... Oh, sorry, and excuse me. Another thing that I should discuss is, if you look at this right here, this is the end of 2018, right? Now, that might not look a little interesting to any of you, but if you remember, 2018 was the end of a midterm year. Right now, we're in 2026, the end of a midterm year. So if you see, we're in the end of, when we get close to the end of this midterm year, and we see Tesla start to go down and just reenact this exact same pattern of behavior, I mean, once we go to Q4 of the next year, that's would probably be a pretty decent time to buy Tesla, right? Within the first or second month of the next year, or June or April of next year. And the funny thing is, this decline that you see, this final, sorry, I just have so many drawings I'm just going to remove, but this final push downwards was at the end of 2018, which is a midterm year. What if, we get to the end of this year and we see Tesla going down, until the beginning of next year? Like, what if we see that? Well, that just means it seems like we're just playing out this exact same behavior, right? So, I don't know. It's pretty exciting because with Bitcoin, this indicates that, in a few more months, we'll have an amazing buying opportunity. The next thing is for Tesla, which is another asset that is really good, I think, there's something lining up for that as well. So if you kind of miss out on Bitcoin, where you're worried to tell people about Bitcoin because, that time has passed where it might be a good opportunity to buy, well, I'm wondering if Tesla will give another opportunity to buy a really great asset. And I think the last thing I'm going to discuss is why. Okay, so obviously I'm kind of talking about these patterns, and people are like, okay, it doesn't seem like sufficient. Doesn't it seem like a lot of people? It seems like a little bit risky to just put your faith into just like these patterns in this data, right? But one thing I do want to talk about is if we look at interest rates, U.S. interest rates, you'll see a pretty obvious what? Am I... Okay, I don't know. I guess it's right here. I don't know what I'm doing. If I'm just spelling it wrong. what seems very obvious to me is when you align U.S. interest rates with Tesla, when you saw the interest rates really start to come down over here during the COVID, you saw Tesla literally just explode up. And so, I mean, if you kind of look over here, you saw interest rates originally coming down, and what happened? Tesla was starting to go up, right? Now, a lot of people don't know this, but actually, the government was planning on cutting more interest rates. However, because a lot of what happened with the U.S.-Iran, situation, the government's no longer considering decreasing interest rates, right? As you saw the blue line, that's interest rates. When it got cut a lot, that's what pushed up the Tesla stock, right? I mean, it seems obvious to me that when you really have these brutal cuts, the Tesla stock exploded. I mean, look, just look at this, okay? The interest rates are rising up here. Tesla's literally doing nothing, right? The interest rates are rising up here, and you literally saw Tesla almost bleeding to this point. And then it started to finally come up as, the interest rates are coming down. And the crazy thing is, I don't think we're going to get interest rates cuts anymore for this year because of rising inflation. So it's likely we'll see interest rates. I mean, even if you kind of just look over here, interest rates got cut, or were being cut over here, and the stock just started to go up. But it's likely interest rates might come up for a final time the end of this year. That pushes it down. And then once we get into next year, the interest rates might come down, which would bring the stock of Tesla up, right? And obviously this is just speculation, but I mean, I think the U.S. government has actually said they're not going to cut rates this year, which kind of lines up exactly with what we've been talking about over here, right? And if you think about, okay, interest rates going up, if we saw over here, interest rates going up, kind of put a choke on the stock. The U.S. government said there's a likelihood they're going to raise rates. Why wouldn't we just repeat what happened over here? That's literally what it sounds like. We're just repeating over what we're doing over here. Not only are we repeating it in terms of the graph, right? Just looking at the graph, but in terms of monetary policy of interest rates, well, we're probably just doing the same thing as well. And if we looked at what the monetary policy was in this midterm year, we're raising rates. That government said they're going to raise rates again. Probably going to raise rates, I should say. We haven't seen it happen yet, but if they raise rates, that's probably going to cause this final downward move that we've been talking about. That would happen on the graph if this pattern were to play out. Which, if you saw that happen, that should give you the confidence that we're probably going to be seeing Tesla make another move upwards. And so, yeah, this is a stock that, I'm really looking at. It's unfortunate because it took me a while to really see this pattern, and I've only really been looking at Tesla, the stock, for a couple months, and this never really jumped out at me until I started looking at a logarithmic scale. When you look at a logarithmic scale, things start to kind of pop up out at you, and to me, this is obviously something that pops out. We have a low here, a lower low there, an all-time high. And what do we have over here? Low, a lower low, and a higher high, which we struggled to really beat until the end of the midterm year where we collapsed. And if you see, right now we're in the midterm year, but if we see that collapse, I mean, that should give you a pretty good idea that we're likely going to see that. So yeah, that's just basically everything I want to talk about. I talk a lot about Bitcoin on this channel because it's very exciting, right? But just because I talk a lot about Bitcoin doesn't mean there's other assets I'm not looking at. And so I think for, a better diversified portfolio, you might want to look at Tesla. And actually, if we kind of just look at Bitcoin for a second, we can see this is an 18,000% increase from 2018 to 2021. We look now from 2022 to 2025, it's a 600% increase, which means every single year Bitcoin is making less and less money, right? Well, Bitcoin's making less and less money, and Tesla goes on this crazy, look, Tesla went from $12, this was $12 over here, to 400, right? It did a 40x. I mean, if Tesla does a 10x over here, it's likely going to beat out Bitcoin in the long run. However, and sorry, it'll beat Bitcoin out in the short term where it's going up. However, if you see Tesla going up this crazy, this fast, and another thing I wanted to just quickly talk about, but if you kind of look, Tesla shot up over here, went back down, went up, and then went to an all, and had its most of its stuff right here, right? If you look, it played out right there too again. That's a kind of another pattern I noticed. But anyways, I think it's likely that we'll see Tesla probably do better than Bitcoin. It's likely. However, it'll only do better for, the 1 year it probably spends just going straight up. The 1.5 years, I should say. But after it's kind of done this move, it's probably just going to chop around again for the next, 5 to 7 years. It's probably just going to do nothing. At this point, you're better taking your Tesla, any money you made in Tesla, and putting it into Bitcoin, which is probably still going to, while Tesla's doing nothing, Bitcoin's probably going to slowly go up during the time Tesla's not, is chopping around in these areas. Yeah, so that's all I had to say. Tesla's a stock that I'm really looking at, and I think could have exciting opportunities coming out soon. So I hope, I hope that really brought some more information to you and some catalysts that I think are gonna really kind of motivate Tesla to repeat this exact same behavior. And if we go into this year, interest rates come up, which would probably push the stock down, and then we start cutting rates next year, and we see the Tesla stock go up. Don't FOMO in up. Don't buy Tesla stock if you see it run up, a crazy percent. I would look to buy over here when it's possible. And if you see that happen, that's probably a good place to buy. But don't buy Tesla. If you see it, exploding up here, don't buy it up there. Even if you miss it. It's okay to miss things. We all miss stocks, good opportunities. But if you do miss it, don't buy in at this top, because then you're waiting for years where Tesla just does nothing, right? So, yeah, I've been rambling on for quite a bit, but I'll give updates to this stock later this year in a few months, just to see where we're at with Tesla. Tesla's a pretty boring stock, I'm gonna be honest. I mean, if you just look at what it's been doing, Tesla, it just seems like it hasn't really done anything. So it's kind of boring to talk about and be really bullish. But if you kind of look at Bitcoin, for the most part, Bitcoin kind of just trends up, right? And people kind of like hearing that more. So, yeah, it's kind of boring to talk about this stock. We'll see if things play out. And especially if we see something like this, I'll be making videos of it. But that's kind of what I see in the future of Tesla. Hope that was very informative, and we'll see if this plays out. I'll be giving you guys updates. That's all I had to discuss for today, so have an amazing rest of your week. Thanks so much.